Welcome to the Experience More Tour. My name is Marshall, and I am here today to discuss next gen GORE-TEX Pro. We're going to be taking a sneak peek at it, specifically how Arc'teryx leverages GORE-TEX Pro technology in some of their products, and exactly who gets that and who is that right for. And we're going to be exploring all of that. And so I know some about that, but there are a couple folks out there that know a whole lot more than me. And we have two of those people on the call with us today. Today we have with us Tiffany from GORE-TEX brand, who works as a marketing account representative with between sort of GORE-TEX and Arc'teryx. And he has so much knowledge on that relationship as well as the internal workings of Gore. So we're going to be scratching the surface of his knowledge today, but we're excited to have Tiffany with us. And then we also have with us from Arc'teryx, Julia Reis. And maybe you've seen Julia on some of the amazing trading videos that have been coming out. I'm a little starstruck to be able to talk with her, to be perfectly honest. And she has a ton of knowledge as she is a trainer and she gets access to those people we all wish we had access to. And then because she's brilliant, she can synthesize that and bring it all together for us and share that with us today. So it's going to be a pretty high level conversation that we have. So let's bring up Andre and Julia. There you are. Hey, Andre, how are you doing this morning?
Good. How you doing, Marshall?
I'm excellent. Hey, Julia, good to see you. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Awesome. And so before we kind of roll in, I want to have you all introduce yourselves to the audience a little bit more so we know who you all are. And plus, you have super cool jobs, and we're always curious about how you get those types of jobs. So, Andre, I'm going to begin with you. I gave a light intro, but what would you say you do with GORE-TEX?
Ooh, wow. So my job with GORE-TEX, and first of all, one of the funny things about working for WO Gore and Associates is that we don't actually have jobs or titles. We have commitments. So my commitment is to work with the Arc'teryx brand and work in all attributes of brand and marketing with them. And so anything that they want to talk about, from what color should the thread be on the GORE-TEX logo on the jacket, to hey, what if we partner together to do really cool things at the Arc'teryx Academy in Mammoth this year? Those are all things that I do.
So it's fair to say you have to know a lot about Arc'teryx and a lot about GORE-TEX technology, and then to synthesize that in a way that communicates it or even just sort of makes it more apparent for everybody.
Yeah, I don't know as much as, like, say, the product specialist team at Gore does, but they definitely make it a point to make sure that I know enough to be dangerous.
Dangerous you are. Um, well, thanks, Andre. We're psyched to have you here. And just before I move on to Julia, what's something about Gore that you wished everybody knew that, or you kind of, maybe it's not out there, and this is your chance to say it.
So one of my favorite things about Gore is that every single person on this call has probably utilized a Gore product today that wasn't an Arc'teryx jacket. It was probably something else that we've made in our other divisions, which might be our medical division, our fire safety services division, our electronics division. We do so many different things. We make about 10,000 different products, and they're in a bunch of different things. And fabrics is the division that I'm blessed to be working in.
It is fascinating to kind of see all the different places that GORE-TEX technology affects our lives. And
Yeah.
we work in fabrics, and we think this is it, but this is not it by any means. It's an interesting organization.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, Andre. Thanks for sharing that. And Julia, I'm going to kick you some similar questions. So, Julia, what I gave you again a light intro, but what is it that you do at Arc'teryx, and how do you get the knowledge that you have?
Yeah, good question. So officially my title is brand product education manager. So I really do love my job. I sit on a brand new team at Arc'teryx. We're only just over a year old now, maybe closer to a year and a half now. And the purpose of our team is, we always say it's to be the voice of design. So we're the only part of our overarching like brand department that actually sits with our designers on the design floor at the Arc'teryx Design Center in North Vancouver. So my day-to-day is spent on the design floor, interacting with our designers, picking their brains day in, day out about what they're working on, what they're fussing over on that day, what's to come, what they're looking forward to. So it makes for, I don't know, makes for kind of the best job ever.
It's the design floor at Arc'teryx is a premium space. It is the real estate there is of a premium, and the fact that they sort of Arc'teryx has decided to put the trainers up there with everybody really does show that commitment to trying to get sort of elevating design and elevating your job and education. It's really interesting, and yeah, I think we're all a little envious that you get to go up there on a daily basis and interact and see some of the cool mad scientists at work. I would love to get a day of doing that. That'd be pretty cool. And so, Julia, another question to you is, again, what's something now that you've worked at ARC for quite some time, what's something that you've come to understand about Arc'teryx that maybe you didn't understand before you worked there, or you just want to say it as it is, like something you wish everybody knew?
Yeah, I mean, I think my appreciation in my role for like the lengths our design team goes to develop these like incredibly user specific super high performance products is pretty incredible. And I know today we're talking about next gen Gore Pro. And I mean, I think I know that we put at least 50 different products out into field testing with our athletes. Many of them were field tested for over 150 hours in the field. And I think like just the lengths that we go to make sure we're really, really pressure testing everything and making sure that we're able to deliver the best possible products to our athletes is something that, you know, I have a growing appreciation for every day.
Yeah, and it shows in that concept of obsessive design, right? It's never quite done, but at some point it has to go to market, and how the designers think about specific end uses, and then how you have figured out a way to test it with athletes and get that feedback loop between the designers and folks using it. And again, I think I really highlighted how, you know, garments have specific in use ideas in mind as they come to market. And yeah, today we're going to be talking about Next Gen Pro, and that is a category of in use. Well, for us, it's a category of in use, and then for you, you split it into even more specific niche categories. But there's also premium product in like the Norvan, right? And so it's cool to explore how those divisions start to happen and how you think about that. So yeah, interesting, right? And that obsessive design concept is really, I think it's something that builds a lot of trust with the brand, with Arc'teryx, with the consumers. I know for myself, it's very, very true. I trust that you're obsessively designing everything.
For sure. I definitely think it's something that we live and breathe at the brand. Whether you're on the design team, marketing, doesn't really matter. I think it's definitely like an ethos that we live every day.
Yeah, and it shows, right? And it feels, and you can see it reflected in the product. It's amazing. Well, speaking of obsessive design, we're been a lot of obsession going over this next gen Gore-Tex Pro, and that's what we're here for today, is to dive into this specific category. It is, like I said, not every day that it gets an update, but we're in an update cycle this year, and it's really exciting to be able to share that and see what's new with this and how it's evolved, and it keeps evolving to be better. And we're going to define what better means, because that is through the eye of the end user. So Andre, let's start by putting next gen Gore-Tex Pro into perspective. From the perspective of Gore brand, what does Gore-Tex Pro represent? Is it a materials package? Is it an idea? What is Gore-Tex Pro?
Sure. Gore-Tex Pro is the black belt of fabrics, is a way to think of what Gore-Tex Pro is. So it's a qualification where you have to do a lot of different things to earn it. And then once you earn it, you can play in the toughest end uses possible. That's why I like to think of it as like the black belt of fabrics. Gore-Tex Pro is the result of having an ongoing dialogue, really since 1998, with Arc'teryx about what fabrics and what ways to keep people protected in the worst environments and extreme and extended conditions that they could get. And they chose us way back then, and every year they get a chance to choose something else, and they keep continuing to choose us. Thank you, Julia. Right. And it's a very great thing. But the reason why they choose us is because we've established this concept of the Gore-Tex Pro technology, which is for people that are working doing not just enjoyment, but actually like working and doing hard end uses for really long periods of time in really tough conditions. So they need fabrics that will perform at a really high standard over and over and over again, no matter what happens to them. So by setting that standard for all the different textiles that we make for Arc'teryx, then Arc'teryx can reach into that box and take the things that we do and create the textiles that they need to create the jackets that the obsessive design team people do. And that's what basically it is.
So it's this partnership, this ongoing, like it's almost like a challenge from Arc'teryx. GORE-TEX gets to step up to that challenge and then co-test these products together to bring them to market. And you mentioned that it's a textile, but it's more than a textile, right? Like it's yes, it's a textile, but it's more of an idea, a broader idea. How beyond the textile does Gore view GORE-TEX Pro?
So the most important thing about GORE-TEX Pro textiles is that we've established a history inside the industry of having the greatest waterproof technology in the world, and we're constantly trying to update that. But uh, it depends on what waterproofness means to different people. So sometimes people need things that are waterproof, but they want them to be more lightweight, or sometimes they want things that are waterproof, but they want them to be a different, brighter color or different textile. When you compromise on those things, it changes the waterproofness of them overall. GORE-TEX Pro is the best balance between all the things that you'd want in a jacket and its ability to perform in the worst environments over extended periods of time. That's the real part of GORE-TEX Pro is we use all the different things that GORE-TEX works with: face fabrics, membrane packages, backer knits, seam sealing, right? We do all those different things, and they also are other parts of GORE-TEX. But in the Pro standard, we push all those things to the toughest possible outcomes, and we have the best compromise of all of them.
Right, so it's like it's a solution, right? It's a solution to the problem, which is it's not really a problem. It's a cool problem to have, but it's going out, like you said, people that are working in the field, going to extreme places for extended periods of time, and so it's a complete solution as you look at it, right? And right now, the textiles like a woven backer, which we'll get into, that currently is the best solution for that for these types of textiles, but it's also more than that. It's a suite of tests, and it's a way of looking at it.
Mhm.
And how many sort of evolutions, generations of evolutions have we gone through to get where we are today in GORE-TEX Pro?
Whoa, I want to say this is number 5. I want to say the 5th generation. I could be wrong on that, to be honest with you, but I'm pretty sure this is the 5th generation of GORE-TEX Pro technology, harkening back to 1998 when Arc'teryx first started working with us. With our first jackets were made of XCR fabric, which was the predecessor, the early dinosaur egg of GORE-TEX Pro. And then once we started working together, we begat all the other generations of that. So there's been quite a few. And the reason why they've evolved over time has had a lot to do with the conversation that we constantly are having with Arc'teryx, because Arc'teryx asks us basically about 3 different things every week. They say, GORE-TEX is great. Can you make it more durable and waterproof? Can you make it lighter weight? Can you make it more comfortable? Those are the 3 things that we constantly get pushed on. And if you look at the history of GORE-TEX Pro technology that Arc'teryx has used, every version of that has been an answer to that question. It'd be more durable or more lighter weight or more comfortable. It's all these different things that they've asked us over time. And we've not just changed the material itself, but we've also changed how we construct things, and then how we finish things. Those are all different things that are part of that pro evolution over time.
So so I hear you saying it. The goal here is to make it more comfortable, right? Which means lighter weight, but also more durable, and then adding in responsibility, really as this next gen comes out is paramount. Julia, what are you hearing internally at Arc'teryx around that idea? What kind of chatter is around more durability, and where are you seeing that ask for increased durability coming from?
Well, like everything we do at Arc'teryx, everything starts with our athletes and what they need to perform in the field. So, with a material like GORE-TEX Pro, we have kind of the ultimate tool in our toolbox to build the most durable products for our athletes in every every mission, anything that they're doing in the mountains. Obviously, Gore-Tex Pro for us is really used for like our most pinnacle and highest performance products for athletes who are really demanding the most out of their gear. So that's why you see it in our most well-known products like the Alpha SV, for example. You see Gore-Tex Pro being used in sort of like what our version of sort of like our professional product category. And I know we'll talk about our new Alpine Guide jacket later on. But yeah, I think for us, durability is quintessential, not only for delivering the best performance and I guess providing athletes with what they need. But I think it's also kind of our leading criteria for how we want to achieve some of our sustainability goals as a brand as well.
That is absolutely crucial, right? You can do lots of things, and we are, right, around recycled content, even repairability. But really, if we can create a product that doesn't need to be repaired and that can last a long time, that is the number one. And ARC does an amazing job with sewing, seam taping, construction, even down to articulation, so things don't wear out in some of those zones, right? To increase the longevity of these products, and then incorporating Gore-Tex Pro when it makes sense for these end uses that that you've talked about, right? You know, professionals, guides, alpine, ice climbing, those types of things. Then really you can get well, I think the longest lasting garments in the industry, right? And that is going to be number one from a responsibility standpoint. Um, uh, well, let's take a closer look then at sort of this concept, this solution called Pro. And when I think of it, and this is something I learned from Arc'teryx a long time ago, right? Really, what is Pro? Well, it's this synergy of materials, design, and construction, and where these come together in the middle um, is Gore-Tex Pro. When you have maximum rugged materials, designed like you said for going into these extreme environments, and then some of these construction techniques that have been refined over the year to increase durability, to increase functionality. And you get into that middle and you're going to have Gore-Tex Pro. And then there's this additional component, which is testing. You got to test it. You got to know if it's going to work, right? And this is a whole thought problem on its own, and not only a thought problem, something that is practically applied. So what I want to focus on though today specifically is around materials and testing, because I think that is fascinating, and this is where I'd like to dive a little bit deeper. So, Andre, can you define for us from the Gore perspective what a pro material is?
Sure. So I guess you mean from the testing side of it?
No, let's go materials right now. Excuse me.
Okay.
Just
So
specifically materials.
sure. So so if you're looking at any material that would pass, and remember, Gore-Tex Pro is not a material; it's the black belt, it's the standard,
Right.
right? So
Right.
if you're looking at a material, laminate material that Gore-Tex would make and supply to Arc'teryx, what would it be? It would be a laminate and a way of putting it together to make it waterproof that passes all of the Gore-Tex Pro standard tests, and that's the big difference between it. So it's usually a face textile, and Arc'teryx is very choosy about the face textiles that they choose to that they use, because they have to do a lot of different things. Like one of the things that they do is Arc'teryx chooses textiles that perform really great with color. And one of the things that people never think about is that if you change the color in the face textile, you change the performance of the textile. It literally, the color and the shade can literally make a difference in how the whole fabric package can perform. So choosing things like the right colors, the right combinations of materials in the face textile, the way it's put together. Arc'teryx has a long history of using some rather plain face textiles, but it's because those are mechanically inherently more waterproof and they hold DWR better. So Arc'teryx has always made these choices that are going to be for the benefit of the person using it in the worst environment. Then there's the thing that everybody thinks about when they think about Gore-Tex, which is the membrane package in the middle. And our new membrane that we're talking about right now is the Gore-Tex EPE membrane, made out of a much more sustainable material set than our previous one, and it's PFAS free. And then usually on all Gore-Tex Pro materials, one of the commonalities you'll find is the GORE-TEX woven backer. And the woven backer is really, really important because the woven backer increases the strength of the material. It makes it a little bit more durable and increases the ability to seam seal things. So those are like the three basic things that you'd find like overall in any type of pro textile that Arc'teryx would choose from us. Then finally, there's the seam sealing attributes. And this is really a huge partnership that we've done over decades, right? Like one of my favorite things is that GORE-TEX's job is to make sure that things are waterproof no matter what, right? So because we do that, we've had some things like a really wide seam tape standard for a really long period of time. And Arc'teryx challenged us for that because one of the things that they always wanted to say to us, and they did say to us, was we need to make the jackets more comfortable. And one of the ways we can do that is to eliminate all this seam tape because it doesn't breathe and it's kind of bulky and it makes our stuff look bad. So we said, well, we can't do that because our standard is 18 millimeter seam tape. But it went back and forth for a bunch of years. And over time, Arc'teryx proved to us that they could very successfully do that with a thing called tiny tape, which is a much smaller version of our tape. Had to modify some machinery to actually get that to work in the factories that they did, but they did it. And so we went back and forth and we agreed that that would be a new standard in all GORE-TEX materials over time. So the materials package is important. And the way of putting things together is important. The repeatability of it is important, but all of it has to meet that higher level specification, that black belt certification of fabric.
Right, it's about the black belt certification, and we have to use the current best solution for that, which, like you said, incorporates some of these face fabrics that are engineered to be more durable. And we'll get a little bit more into that. Like, what does that even mean? But also, right now, the best solution for a backer technology is that woven backer technology that we currently have on there. It's lightweight, it's extremely breathable, it's extremely strong, and abrasion resistant, right? And then we add that into our new super strong membrane in the middle, and this really does create a laminate package which we can confidently pass subject to the test that we run. And what that ends up with is a suite of textiles that then Arc'teryx can choose from. So Julia, when you look at these Gore Pro textiles that we are producing, how then is Arc'teryx selecting from that library? What are you looking for from a textile to put into this end use category that we call pro?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. I think one thing that, speaking for myself, I didn't realize, at least in my first few years working for the brand, was GORE-TEX doesn't have just, a handful of materials to choose from. There are literally hundreds of Gore laminates to choose from, even just in the pro category. So knowing that our our design team and our in-house materials team demand, I think we have by far the highest testing standards in the industry, like the most stringent criteria for the quality of the material when we're looking at waterproofness, of course, durability and breathability. What we end up with when we're going back and forth with Gore is we're trying to make sure we're really using the best of what they have. So we obviously design for three sort of main activity buckets. So we design for snow, we design for trail, and we design for climb. Depending on what product category we're designing for and what the end use is, we're always looking for a specific laminate that's going to suit the needs of that intended end use. So I mean, I think at a high level, almost every single Gore product we make uses a nylon face fabric. So we know that nylon materials are, just as a baseline, way more durable than polyester, which you see from many other brands who are selling Gore products. So I think just our use of nylon, our preferred use of nylon materials is definitely something where, our baseline offering is still going to have that extra durability right out the gate.
Yeah.
With this transition to EPE materials, and our entire product line will be, whether it's pro or performance products, will be with EPE laminates by the end of 2025. So we're using all recycled nylons in our face fabric. So that's a big update for us. The EPE membrane has proven not only through the GORE lab testing, but our own lab testing and field testing to provide the best waterproof and breathable material that we can find. And, you know, we're testing everything out there. We don't have our blinders on just for GORE-TEX. You know, we need to do our due diligence and make sure we're looking at anything new. And but we keep coming back to GORE-TEX because the technology is really the only one that's met, or even in many cases exceeded our criteria. And then, you know, the backer material, that's another area where we're upgrading GORE laminates to being recycled backer materials. And in many of our pro products, we're actually able to leverage dope dyed materials as well. So throughout the full laminate package, we're really getting upgrades in terms of overall durability, performance, and sustainability. So yeah, I I think that covers it.
No,
I
it
could
does,
talk
right?
on
And so
a
you're
lot
looking
longer.
for these call outs even within the pro library of this, like, okay, where can we go with the most durable, or the most tear resistant, for instance, or something like that, based on a specific end usage. So you are selectively choosing from our library. Um, Julie, what happens when you don't see something on our library you like? Is there a process that you then work with GORE-TEX to develop something you like?
Yeah, I think this is the beauty of the relationship that we have with GORE, which I guess is, I don't know, is coming up on 30 years, 27 years now. And I think the iterative back and forth process that we have with GORE, the trust that we have, like it's that relationship that has allowed us to innovate and create things like our Hadron LCP face fabric. That wouldn't have been possible without partnership from GORE. And I know we will talk a little bit more about Hadron
Mhm.
later on in this segment, but I think GORE's willingness to innovate with us, and you know, if they don't have what we're looking for, we really do work together to make sure that we're building the right materials to suit our needs. So I think Hadron is like such a great example of what happens when we're not satisfied.
Very much so. I think that's, I just want to chime in, Marshall, real quick.
Yeah,
I think
please.
one of the things that's really great about that is that I think what Julie talked about is really interesting, because people just think of, I think, these brands as like these static things, but they don't understand, like every day, everyone at GORE gets up and it's a race. We're racing as fast as we can because our Arc'teryx wants something new. And how are we going to do that? You know, how are we going to figure this out? Blah, 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 blah. It's very much an iterative process. And every day we got to get up, we got to go to our Arc'teryx, we got to show them our best effort every single freaking day, because Arc'teryx can choose anybody, right? We're just blessed that they keep choosing us. And so we're going to keep doing the hard work that we got to do to keep doing that. But I think it's very important for people to understand, like, these relationships aren't static. You know, when a brand chooses something, especially a brand like Arc'teryx, where the promise of the product to the consumer that's wearing it is so important. It's got to do what it looks like it's going to do and what it says it's going to do.
Yeah.
So they would choose anybody to keep that promise, because that's where the trust in Arc'teryx is built. So we have to like work every freaking day to make sure that we keep doing the things that we got to do to get that done.
Yeah, and that's that partnership, and we're constantly delivering, and that's where that next gen GORE-TEX Pro comes out right now, right? There was a,
Yep.
there was a challenge. Can you use recycled nylon face fabrics? Can you have a PFAS-free membrane that's actually stronger, right? And that challenge is met, right? And so we were able to meet that challenge and continue that relationship. Andre, I have a couple just textile technical questions for you,
Oh
just because
no.
I know
Okay. Let's hear it.
crowd is curious. First of all, is there a minimum denier spec for GORE-TEX Pro, or is that the wrong way to think of it?
40D has traditionally always been articulated, 40 denier weight of fiber has always been traditionally articulated as the thing that we found that was the minimum denier weight to pass the durability specs in the past, because we had a durability spec threshold. And we've experimented with some things around that nowadays, but I think that's still the minimum that we have. But most of the textiles that we have now are actually a little bit above that in the pro category.
Right, and it just so happens that's the one, right? If we could figure out how to do it in 20D and it would pass the durability spec, cool, we would do it.
Well, I think the most important part was that we couldn't figure out. See,
Yeah.
so the great thing about the black belt standard, right, is that the most important reason why it's a standard is because now you know what you can't do, right? And so the one in testing, one of the things that we are always trying to figure out, especially, so one of the things that distinguishes the newest version of GORE-TEX Pro technology from the older versions is the idea of ruggedness testing and how we've incorporated that into the previous body of pro testing to set a newer, higher standard of black belt +1, right, of what the new fabrics can do. So what we've done with that testing, and the whole point of that testing, is to find the best modes, or the modes of failure, identify the things that break the textile, right, before we set the standard for manufacturing. So then that way, when our Terex designers are designing with something and they say this is better than before, it really is better than before. And ruggedness testing is part of that. And the outcome of things like ruggedness testing is that 30 denier, 20 denier, no matter how we glue it together, no matter how we fix it, no matter how much seam tape we slap on it, it won't pass that suite of tests.
Yeah.
So that's the whole point, is that the standard is there to protect the integrity of the promise that Arc'teryx has about their garments to those consumers.
Right, so that ruggedness testing, we're going to dive into a little bit how that is tuned from field testing, specifically a lot of guide field testing. That ruggedness testing is going to dictate that threshold we set for, I'll use your analogy, the black belt certification for next gen GORE-TEX Pro. Now, what happens is often in these laminate packages, these end up having a little more body, right? Some people describe it as crunchy. And Chase asks, what part of the GORE-TEX Pro package makes it more crunchy?
Well, previously it was the membrane, was a big thing, because EPTFE membrane, expanded polytetraethylene, the stuff we used to make GORE-TEX out of, was as rigid, and it's not stretchy and not bouncy. If you notice that GORE-TEX doesn't have a ton of stretchy fabrics, and one of the reasons why was because EPTFE is a relatively rigid membrane, even though it's very, it's super tiny. So the crunchiness, oftentimes in the past, came from that. And well, here's a funny crunchy story. One of the funniest things is that when we started working, we worked with Arc'teryx to develop the EP technology for years now. And so they've seen some of the very first prototypes of anything that we ever did. And one of my favorite experiences was working with the advanced concepts team, that we're walking around the forest and they have a bunch of jackets on. And the report back after the time is like, yeah, this doesn't feel right. And we're like, well, why? And they're like, well, it's just, it's too quiet. It's too quiet, and it's a little bit too soft. And we're like, wait a minute. For years, you guys have said everything is too loud. You got to be kidding me. And now it's going to be, that's what we're doing here. And they're like, yeah. So they literally didn't like the fact that the new membrane, even though it was super durable, was a little too quiet, because one of the attributes of the new membrane of expanded polyethylene was that it's really soft and it's quieter than the old crunchy stuff. So we figured out some ways around that. What's one of my favorite things is that the crunchiness is an attribute of things that people complain about, but at the same time they expect when they buy expensive outerwear.
So Julia, why is that crunchiness desirable from the Arc'teryx perspective in this pro category? It isn't desirable for everything, right? This jacket in the Norvan, I want it quiet, but
yeah,
some garments we want to build that body in. Julia, what is it at Arc'teryx that you consider important about that crunchiness?
I honestly think it's a big kind of like an emotional connection that you get with feeling like you've got like a suit of armor on.
Mhm.
And that's something that any athletes who's used a GORE product, that's sort of what you've become accustomed to over the last 30 years. So yeah, I really think it's grounded in just feeling like you've got that suit of armor on.
It's that feeling, right? Like a premium product is going to feel like a suit of armor, much like a Lexus door is going to close a little different than a Toyota door. It's just going to have a different feel, and we've come to expect that out of pro. I mean, there are technical reasons too. Crunchier fabric is going to sit on our bodies a little bit differently, allow for maybe a little more protection from our bodies from the elements, but it really is that emotional connection. We understand that pro is crunchy.
Sure.
And having things like having to engineer that in specifically was a challenge with this new EPE. It was interesting.
Marshall, I don't want to be all old man about this, but one of my favorite things is y'all don't remember back in ancient times when all the fabrics that everybody worked with, uh, way before Arc'teryx even was, or as a company, everything was huge deniers and everything was crunchy, right? It didn't matter what it was made of. It was very funny because it was like at that point in time, the definition of hardcore outdoor gear was heavy, heavy, heavy. I remember wearing a snowboarding jacket that was like cost a gajillion dollars and was billed as the ultimate, and it literally probably weighed about 5.5 pounds, and it was the heaviest thing in the world. And one of the magic things about working with Arc'teryx is that their constant push to refine super durable products into more lightweight, more comfortable things to wear on the mountain and these hardest end uses led us to this day now where the crunchiness that we're seeing is kind of actually much lower than it ever was way back in the dark ages. And now we're entering a time when Arc'teryx designers are starting to embrace the idea like, oh, okay, we have a softer, quieter fabric that still is super robust. This is great. What do we do next? So I think in a few years, we're going to look back and the crunchiness era will be a little bit of an artifact. We'll be like, oh yeah, remember when
Maybe,
things were
right?
crunchy?
Yeah.
Yeah, remember when things were crunchy?
Don't you dare take my crunchy jacket away.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Andre, you brought up weight. How does the overall weight of Gore-Tex Pro textile compare to non-Gore-Tex Pro textiles? Does it necessarily have to be heavier? Does it always weigh more?
So I think one of the most important things is that weight is a function of what fabric you pick, right? It's the membrane technology doesn't have a ton to do with it. The backer technology doesn't have a ton to do with it, but it has a lot to do with what you put on the top of the fabric and then how much of it you put on, how much fabric there is in the jacket. So how Arc'teryx has been ingenious in their history about attacking weight is through two things. Because we can only do so much as fabric makers. We take a top fabric, a bottom fabric, a thing in the middle, and we stick it together, right? And we try to make it all stay together for a long period of time. But what Arc'teryx has been ingenious about doing is saying, what if we eliminate some things that probably aren't necessary? What if we make the silhouette slimmer? What if we eliminate a pocket? What if we move a zipper from here to there? What if we have a better constructed hood? Remember, Arc'teryx's initial genius as a company was in thermo molding, right? That was the thing that started the whole shebang, right? Before they did
It was a
apparel.
mountain bike holder, so you could
Yeah, mountain bike
like over
holders.
your
Yeah,
shoulder.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. They used to, those guys used to melt stuff all the time for their own personal use, right? To make cool gear, which is why harnesses were like the biggest thing in the, ancient rock solid days. But the idea of the fact that they were doing that was that they're always trying to shave the weight by making better designs. And part of that focus on that in doing things like taking a big 3-button or 3-placket zipper, which is what kind of like a Gore standard, and saying, we've got this great idea. What if we use these special zippers that we can laminate into a jacket, right? That's something you do. Can we get this to pass the Gore Pro spec? Yeah. That's an example of how Arc'teryx has always attacked lightweight in an ingenious way beyond just the material set. What they ask for from us is they say, okay, great. Can you make it the same weight that you're providing us, but can it be more durably waterproof? Can it be more sustainable? Can it be da, 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 da? They haven't been super unhappy with the weights of materials that we provide Arc'teryx. And sometimes, like you'll see in a lot of the stuff coming out in 25, 26, they've actually increased some of the denier weight on some of the fabrics in some places of the jackets or certain kinds of jackets. But what they are always trying to do is if a designer has a vision of a super lightweight thing, can you give them the durability to fulfill the vision of that designer? That's always the hurdle that we're constantly working through with them.
Well, one of the visions, Julia, is around the guide jackets, and Ed has asked, he's seen guides out using Arc'teryx jackets using Pro, and part of this next gen iteration is getting out and getting it tested. So how have you been utilizing some of your guide partnerships to test next gen Gore-Tex Pro, Julia? And what type of feedback are you hearing from folks out there using it?
Yeah, I mentioned at the top of this call, like our Gore Pro products have all been field tested for 150 hours plus.
Yeah.
With the likes of Sarah Hoonican, like professional mountain guide, Michelle Parker, you know, our whole athlete team and our relationships with our guide partners are really where we have like the ultimate testing ground for products and new innovations like GORE-TEX Pro.
Mhm.
I think like the feedback that we're hearing, you know, I actually was in Chamonix last summer doing a product education session with our athlete team. We went in there being really excited to talk about all of the sustainability wins with new EPE materials, which is obviously like a massively exciting update. But once we started getting into the fact that we actually have a more durable and lighter weight product as a result of EPE technology, our athletes are like, wait a second, like it's more durable and lighter weight. Like, why didn't you just start with that? So I think, you know, what we had been hearing in the field, and of course it's always this iterative process of, you know, putting it to the test, getting feedback, going back. I don't think, you know, overall like waterproofness and DWR performance wasn't a concern. I think what we really heard was like super positive feedback, being like, oh, it just feels like a little bit more supple, it's more packable,
Mhm.
it still feels like burly, it's still, you know, breathable. So I think it was still ticking all of the boxes of what our athletes and what mountain professionals really expect from a brand like Arc'teryx. And in many cases, and I know we're going to get into a couple examples here, in many cases, the EPE membrane technology, because it's thinner and because it's lighter weight, we actually thought it was a really big win for us to be able to use more durable, higher denier face fabrics to boost overall durability without adding significant weight to the overall package. And in
Right.
some cases, with many of our like product updates, we were able to reduce the overall weight. So the EPE technology actually has allowed us to cut, in the case of the Alpine jacket especially, we've been able to significantly reduce weight while upgrading the feature set. So in some of our pro products, we've been able to increase the volume of our pockets, which sounds maybe kind of insignificant, but when you think about it,
Mhm.
when you're out in the field and you've got radios and you've got, I don't know, your snacks, maps, whatever you've got, it's really nice to be able to have these like very well thought through features and be able to bring everything you need with you. So I think, yeah, like the performance gains and the ability for us to upgrade our product feature sets as a result of EP technology has been really exciting for us.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I love that you're thinking about durability, right? And so this lighter weight EPE membrane, which is just as durable as what we were using before, but now just lighter weight, you can offset by increasing the denier in the case as like the Beta jacket and the Alpha SV that's coming out. But you did something really interesting in the Alpine Guide jacket. You actually went with a whole different face fabric altogether. And this, I want to focus a little bit on this. What's you put into the Alpine Guide jacket? First of all, Alpine Guides, what kind of failures were you seeing that you needed to solve for in this? You talked about, you know, increasing the pocket size. That was not a failure, but that was a need. But what were you wanting to solve for in the Alpine Guide jacket as you updated it?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the day in the life of an alpine guide, you're often in very like high exposure, extreme environments. You don't really have a choice of when you're going out there if you're on a search and rescue team. You have to be prepared for anything. Not to mention all the equipment and gear you need to bring with you. So you're thinking about radios, you're thinking about uh,
Mhm.
you know, potentially helicopter access, and really like all of the tools and gear you need to bring with you. And having your gear fail is not an option. I mean, that's really for anyone who's heading out into the mountains or into the wild, but I think especially for mountain professionals like guides and search and rescue. So Not only are we thinking about durability from sort of like a waterproofness point of view, abrasion resistance point of view, but we're also thinking a lot about reducing the likelihood of rips and tears.
Yeah.
So with the Alpine Guide jacket in fall 25, we actually upgraded this with EPE Pro material with Hadron 50D Hadron
Yeah.
face material, which is massive. Like we were able to cut the weight, the overall product weight by close to 100 grams in both the
Wow.
men's and women's models.
Right.
So significant weight reduction, massive improvement in durability and tear resistance. And again, we were able to really hone in on how we were optimizing feature set, like adding a bit more pocket volume for more like bulky equipment, like radios, maps, etc., whatever those professionals need in the field. And I think taking it a level further, something that we've been doing a lot in our efforts to build more sustainable or build more longevity into our products is really looking at the most common like failure points. So, you know, things around cuffs or hems, and just looking at how we can do a better job of seam taping and laminating and just making sure that everything's just going to like last that much longer.
Yeah, really looking for that way to increase the longevity of it, not only in the textile, right? And by incorporating, sort of upgrading Hadron to be a 50D, it now wraps into the Gore-Tex Pro category, right? So we know it's going to be, as Andre said, at least a black belt, right? It's gonna hit that Gore-Tex Pro threshold from our testing suite, but also, you know, incorporating in new ways of constructing it, and to save 100 grams and increase the durability is remarkable, right? And that makes this safer to use. They're going to use it more. They're going to be prepared more often, right? Everything about it makes the guide's job a little bit better and safer, which is the goal in a garment like this. Now, you said you've been out there testing it, right? And you were seeing failures, and we were trying to tweak that. And that's part of this give and take between Gore and Arc. Andre, as we started to hear from Arc'teryx where maybe some of the testing was failing, what did we do at Gore then to correct for that? How do we correct for that? And what's the process around that?
One of my favorite things is that, you know, the new next gen Gore-Tex Pro has a suite of rugged, has really two types of testing that are applied to it. Okay, this is super geeky stuff, Marshall, but I really want to. Kenny Rogley's a person who actually works on our testing paradigm, so I got to give him some props because he's an amazing person.
We have a great video on ExperienceMore tour, I will say.
Yeah, about Kenny, yeah,
for sure.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
So there's really two suites of tests that we use. We have a Gore durability metric, and the Gore durability metric set of tests is more about how long is the performance of this garment going to last? How many years will it do this the way it performs in this test set? Then the other one, which is the ruggedness testing, which is the Gore ruggedness metrics, the GRM testing, that's more about how significant a stress is it before it breaks. And so what that means is we did some interesting things. So as a result of field testing with Arc'teryx in the past, one of the things that's come back is that there were these puncture wounds that were happening inside a lot of the guide jackets, and we couldn't figure out what the heck it was. So we did some interviews with Arc'teryx, and we talked to some people. We figured out there's this concept called tree whip. And tree whip was that when people were skiing through the trees, the branches would whack into their jackets and they would put these little draggy punctures across it. And we're like, wow, we have a very high standard for abrasion, which is the Martindale spec, which is a weighted sandpaper scrub. So it's a huge, you know, more than 30,000 cycles is the test. So we said, how did a fabric pass that but get punctured by these things all the time? And what we figured out was that test didn't cover that real world experience. So we went and we had grabbed a test that was used in different industries to actually simulate that idea, which was the 5-finger scratch test, which Kenny Rogley modified to make it to be really appropriate to detect things like tree whip. So then if it could pass Martindale and it could pass Kenny's new 5-finger scratch test, one of the things that we knew is that it would survive tree whip in the real world. So that's the ruggedness suite of testing. The additional tests that we've created and that Kenny has modified, making Gore proprietary tests, are this back and forth between real world things. Because in the real world, you cannot know everything that's going to happen. You have no idea what's going to happen. But in a lab, and our job is to make sure that every Arc'teryx garment using GORE-TEX materials does what it says it's going to do. Our job in the lab is to make sure that when we make the fabric for them and when we put it all together with them, that it's repeatable over and over and over, which is why we need a lab test to make sure that we can constantly get that to happen. So it's that back and forth, and ruggedness is the ruggedness suite of testing is the outcome of that dialogue that we have with field testers from Arc'teryx and the testing products at GORE.
Right. So Arc'teryx team is out getting these products out there into the guides, into athletes. We're seeing some failures. Then we need to figure out, okay, we don't want those failures, but we can't just guess at a change and send it back out in the field. We need to figure out how to simulate that in the lab so we can send our next best product out to Arc'teryx to retest. And that's where we came up with this suite of elevated tests that GORE-TEX Pro gets. Which is in that video with Kenny, which is really fascinating to watch, right? So not only the score test, like you said, but there's an additional test as well that this new Next Gen Pro is subjected to, which previous versions were not, right? And so we can say this is more rugged, right, based on that.
Yeah, yeah. The ruggedness suite of testing is a really great addition to everything in the black belt standard of GORE-TEX Pro, because it just allows us to get closer and closer to being able to find all the failure modes and do something about them. And then when we laminate the fabrics together and we work at the factories to put the stuff together, we have much lower failure rates.
And Jonas asked around contamination, right? That is another way of failing, not only physical failure, but there's also contamination over time. And you think of some, Julie, I know you're selling a lot to folks who are on road crews, right? In extreme environments. Canada has some major extreme environments for road crews to be out in. And contamination is something there. Julia, what type of contamination failures are you wanting us to solve for? And then I'll kick this also maybe as a conversation. Andre, how are we looking at contamination and solving for that?
Sure. You want to go first, Julia?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest changes with this move towards PFAS-free EPE laminates was in the DWR. And of course, DWR is what's responsible for the beading effect on GORE products. So I think what we, part of our search for ensuring we're still delivering the best possible products to mountain professionals and mountain athletes was finding the material with the most durable DWR. And that's another reason why we kept coming back to GORE-TEX, just like the overall performance of the full package, including the DWR, was the most resistant to contaminants that we could find, therefore providing the longest lasting waterproof protection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's get together soon and do a whole hour on DWR because it's fascinating. But
yeah,
that
kidding.
solve for DWR has been
kidding.
A lot of work, especially with the removal of PFAS. PFAS was excellent at resisting oil contamination. You remove PFAS, suddenly you're kind of got a problem. And so this solve has been to make these products, these DWRs, heavily maintainable and able to restore them over and over again, right? And that gets added into this next gen GORE-TEX Pro product.
Yeah. So I'll toss some more jet about contamination here real quick, Marshall. So contamination is an interesting thing. One of the things that we do a ton of testing on is to see if the laminates can resist contamination. So for GORE, that means things like you're in the field, you got bug spray, you got gasoline, you got car exhaust, and then you have sweat, right? And people doing stuff. You have salami sandwiches. You have all kinds of things that can contaminate a textile and contaminate a jacket. When people are asking us about contamination, there's kind of that suite of things. And then they're also asking us about the after effects of contamination. So what we see a lot of is we'll see failures where things in jackets will delaminate, or they'll see something that they could think of as delamination. And that can be from a lot of things. But the number one thing overall probably is that people aren't washing their stuff enough. I think there was a study done, I think it was 3 years ago now, by Grangers where they surveyed people in the outdoor industry, and the average was 1.5 times per year people were washing their outerwear, which is crazy.
More than I thought they were.
Yeah, it's funny because when we do these events, we talk to people a lot, and they usually get like, oh, I've never washed it, right? Which is something people say proudly. And the crazy part about that is that's not great, because the more oils and sweats that gets into there. What a funny audible. Hey, Ben, as an audible, do you have a SEM picture of the top of any fabric? So this is something where you're looking at the fabric probably magnified 80, 90 times or something like that. And you can look at all the denier fibers that are on top of this. What you could notice here is that in this, there's tiny little spaces in between them, right? And then it's not just flat, it's actually a three-dimensional shape that has all these different fibers bundled together going, the warp and the weft going kind of over and in and out of each other. So when people get sweaty and they sweat a lot of sweat, and oils are in the things that come out of your sweat, some of that, if you don't wash and take care of your jacket, will literally get in between and behind those fibers. And that's where contamination can start to occur, because that can start to eat into the glues that we use to hold some of the jackets and some of the materials together. It can do all kinds of different things to actually create delamination. And so if you like, one of the things that we talk about is it's really rare to see delamination like in the mid shoulder of your jacket. Nobody ever sees that, but where they see it all the time is the shock cord on the bottom of your jacket, the everything around the collar and around the cuffs. And the reason why is because people are sweaty there, and then that stuff gets in there and it starts to get behind those fabrics, those tiny little bundles, and then it's hard to get out if you haven't washed your jacket in 6 months or a year or 3 years, or proudly say never, right? So removing that oil lowers the contamination possibility, and then the jackets can go for much, much, much longer, right? There's every once in a while, Gore-Tex isn't perfect, and every once in a while there'll be a batch of laminate that will have a contamination issue, meaning that the membrane itself can start to like separate once it gets exposed to something. And it's something that we did probably in a factory where we were laminating it, that where that occurred. It's rare. It is mostly never the case when that happens. It's a very rare thing when we find that happening. But what we find a lot of is that people haven't washed their stuff. Right. And I think that's like one of the biggest things, especially with the new DWR technology that we've been applied. PFAS-free DWR has zero oleophobicity, fancy word for oil resistance. And because of that, in order to lower the chances of contamination, we have to wash and dry our stuff way more often.
Fact. Yeah, right. And that's a
Yep.
thing we cover for sure. And new Gore-Tex Pro is, or next gen Gore-Tex Pro is like that as well. I wanted to just review a little bit here, and then get into some of the questions that we've been receiving. But so next gen Gore-Tex Pro launching this year. What I've been hearing you saying is that it is so increased in durability, right? And that can come from increasing the denier in the face fabrics, and that weight is offset by the lighter membrane. Also, new technologies like incorporating Hadron into something like the guide jacket, and maybe we'll see it in some other Gore-Tex Pro garments as well. So increased durability, right? Increased comfort. Maybe still crunchy, but not as crunchy as it was as well. Something to expect from next gen Gore-Tex Pro. Julia, anything else you want to add to sort of to summarize it up, what you see as this step forward in Gore-Tex Pro?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the main drivers for the development of EP materials was a desire to have a lighter impact on the environment. And I would say that this is just another step in what I'm sure will be a long journey towards creating the most sustainable, highest performance products we can. And yeah, I mean, I think I would expect that journey to continue with Gore-Tex, just knowing that they're always willing to work with us and to innovate, and I think care just as much about reaching their own sustainability targets. So super exciting just to be on this path forward and on this journey with Gore.
Yeah, it's exciting to know that we can add in these responsibility, sustainability features like recycled nylon, like solution dyed or dope dyed, PFAS free, right? And technically speaking, you don't have to use this next gen Gore-Tex Pro, right, in your guide jacket, but your guides have all chosen it. And Arc'teryx has chosen it as well as the step up. This is the next best. And it's really exciting to know that this next generation is better from a durability standpoint, from a comfort standpoint, and better from a sustainability standpoint as well, right? It's a win-win. And it's really exciting to know that we have achieved that together with this partnership between Gore-Tex and Arc'teryx. So thank you for sharing all these with us today. There's so many aspects that we've explored, and we're going to continue to have these conversations as we talk about specific products. as they launch in the fall, like the Alpha SV, the Beta AR, some other, the Rush Jacket, and how all of these are sort of, you get into this black belt level of Gore-Tex Pro, and then it can split from there. And Arc'teryx really takes it from there and does fascinating things with these garments to make these products that we trust and we love. So this has been really amazing for us to be able to explore that. So thank you for that, Julia, and thank you for that, Andre.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Marsh.
Thanks, Andre.